If I have not told y'all, our kids are crazy here at Oasis. Um, we just let them do what they do, you know? I go, here's the thing. Jesus knows that kids don't sit still. Why am I going to try to make kids sit still? If Jesus knows that and he created them that way, I'm just making myself mad. You know what I'm saying? So I just let them do what they do. I do have gosh, where did I see it? But it was Jesus at the Last Supper table, but he was sitting with kids. And one little girl is like braiding his hair, and he's like drawing with another kid. Other kids have like paint spilled. It's like running down the table, you know, it's like bubbles being blown on one side, you know. And I was like, I love this. Like, because we as adults, you know, we have to be holy for Jesus, you know. Um, and I love that. Like Jesus was just sitting there with all these kids and just having a good time while they, you know, braid his hair and blow bubbles and all that good stuff. So today, for those who don't know, we are reading. How are y'all? Good, good, good. We are reading Holier Than Thou. Um, and what we are doing, we are reading during the week and then showing up on Sunday mornings and just discussing it. So I know that the majority this morning um, doesn't even know who Jackie Hill Perry is, let alone read the book, you know. Um, but we're going to discuss, for the sake of the live and keeping my OCD schedule on schedule. So there's that. So to catch y'all up, Jackie, has or is making the point about God and his holiness and how we, over the course of Christianity and the course of life, we have taken God and his holiness and we have made it something that it is not. We have made holiness, when we think about it, this thing where God is distant and cold and his love is conditional. We have made his holiness and the idea of holiness something other than what it is. And she makes a really great point. I forget if it's in chapter 1 or the introduction, where she says, we tend to say, okay, God is a pie, but every slice is an attribute of him. And we like to say, okay, his holiness is a slice on one plate, his love is a slice on another plate, his grace is a slice on another plate. And depending on, it's like one of those cheesecakes with the different flavors, you know? It's like that's how we put God on a plate and we serve him up and we go, okay, guys, now this is tiramisu and this is God's holiness. Okay, this is New York style cheesecake. This is God's love. Okay, guys, this is chocolate brownie cheesecake, which why would you ruin cheesecake like that? But anyway, and we go, you know, this is his mercy. But she goes, that's not the case when it comes to God and his holiness and everything that he is. He is all of it at all times. The pie itself, all of those things are ingredients that go into the pie. But when you cut a slice, you get holiness, love, righteousness, mercy, grace, justice, all of that in one piece, not in separate pieces of the pie. It's all in every piece because God is always going to be who he is. That makes sense? All right, cool. I just wanted to do Jackie justice. So in that, excuse me, we jumped into this week, holy, holy, holy. She points out in the last chapter that when Isaiah goes into the throne room of God, that the seraphim are saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. She said, notice they don't say good, 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 or love, 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 but that they say holy, holy, holy. And she explains that in Hebrew, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Writing or way of writing? Literature, thank you. Hebrew literature, anytime you use a word 3 times like that, it's the emphasis on what I am about to say is very important. What I am saying is very true. What I am saying is like please listen to what I am saying. And so she points out that we see Jesus do it all the time when he's talking to everybody. Truly, truly, I say unto you, boom, 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 boom. Truly, truly, I say unto you. So that everybody listening was like, oh, okay, cool. He's actually telling the truth right now. Let me listen up. And so she goes, this is the only two times we see God spoken of in holy, holy, holy 3 times is Isaiah and Revelation, both in the throne room. And she goes, if we don't take the time to take notice of that, then we are actually missing all that God actually is. That makes sense? Okay, cool. All right. So we jumped into chapter 2, holy, 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 moral perfection and the law. This is page 33. Yeah. Page 33. Oh, man. So last week we talked about Isaiah stepping into the throne room, and she says the first thing that Isaiah does is realize who he is not in light of who God is. That because there is no darkness in God, the first thing that Isaiah says, he doesn't fall to his knees in worship. He doesn't fall to his knees crying, singing, praising God for who he is. The first thing he says is, woe is me. For I am an unclean man with unclean lips, living amongst an unclean people. And so we talked about last week, like, have you ever felt that? Have you ever felt when you step into the presence of God, when you feel his presence come into a room, that yes, your spirit is excited, but also there's this thing that comes over you where you almost feel too humble to say anything. You almost feel too humble to, like, there's nothing that you can properly say except, I am not worthy of you being here right now. Thank you so much. And I was telling them every time, gosh, for years, man, we go to a service. So I was a worship pastor at what was the Vine, now Hillside. Hey, Allison, what's up? And so, like, doing Sunday mornings, you know, you're like worried about time, you're worried about music, you're worried about the guitar player, you're worried about the drummer slowing the songs down. Like, all these things are going on in your mind on a Sunday morning, and you're still trying to talk to Jesus to make sure you're in tune so you can get to the people what Jesus wants to get to the people. And so every time we would go to another service where I didn't have to do anything, Bethel music, Hillsong, Young and Free, whatever it was, I would just like cry the first like 3 songs. And I would just like sob, like, you know. Jenny's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I just love Jesus, you know. Crying, bawling my face off. And when I read this about Isaiah, she points this out. I go, oh, that's what was happening to me. Every single time, I just felt so humbled by the presence of God that all that came out of me was, I don't deserve this. Like, I don't deserve anything that you give. I don't deserve anything that you show me. I don't deserve anything. And I would just have this overwhelming feeling of like, I am not worthy of you just being you. I'm not. And I would cry like 3 songs, and like Bethel songs, like that last one is like 8 minutes, you know. These are long songs. I'm just crying for like 30 minutes, you know, just sobbing. But she picks up the story, or she picks up this idea with Peter at the beginning of chapter 2. Yeah. And she talks about how Jesus gets on the boat, on Peter's boat. And this is the story where they have been fishing all night. They put the nets on one side, no fish. The other side, no fish. Jesus gets on the boat, and he's like, put your nets on the other side. And Peter's like, bruh, I did that. You know, like Jesus was like, did you restart the computer? He's like, yeah, I did. I did restart the computer, you know. And so he's like, put your nets on the other side. And as we all know, the fish literally just fill the net, so much so that the nets start to break. And then other boats have to come help them pick up the fish because the creator of the universe put fish in their nets, which is crazy. Yeesh. That's crazy in itself. But she says, that Peter says, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." As she says on page 34, towards the bottom, Peter's response was similar to that of Isaiah's when he uttered, "Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." She said, which shouldn't be surprising when we remember Peter and Isaiah said this while in the presence of the same person, because Jesus is God. So it makes sense that they say the same thing. That's so tight. What I love, and I highlighted it, what's most intriguing about both of their reactions is that being in God's company didn't inspire praise first, but confession. A depth of self-awareness accompanied with real-life fear. Both men understood themselves differently at the sight of God, as if by proximity, their hearts and their nature were laid bare and exposed to the light. His very being stood in moral contrast to theirs, to the point that they had no inward justification to quench the truth about themselves. Being near the one who is light and who has no darkness within himself illuminated their consciences to understand something very simple, that God was holy and they were not. I want to talk about real quick, again, about this idea. She pointed it out last chapter, and I just want to hear your thoughts. Because we come to church and Christianity has made it so easy for us to come to church and just be, do, sing some songs, lift my hands, check the box. You know, I can pay my tithes online. Cool. Fist bump, fist bump. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm great. Life is good. You know, and then we're like, all right, we did it. You know, do you think, and obviously we cannot answer for everyone, but as a pastor, just to be real with y'all, I wonder if this is what keeps people from legitimate life change in Jesus. Like, I would rather have the God that I think he is because I can do and be as I need to, versus actually being in his presence and it legitimately changes me. Because if I'm with him majority of every day, then naturally I'm going to look within myself and go, oh, I'm still not all that he is. Do y'all think that that's why people don't come to Jesus or live in Jesus? Because they just don't want to see themselves? Go ahead.
My experience coming to the Lord was 15. I came off the streets. I had no mother and father present in my life. And when I came to the Lord, actually my husband took me to church. He took me to show me off.
Nice.
And my experience from the streets was dealing with people. I need to look in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And amazingly, it's what these two men experienced when they experienced God.
Mm-hmm.
Was looking God to his face.
Yeah.
And many, many times, on my experience, I had the feeling that people were wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
And the discernment of the street, of the inner
Mm-hmm.
and not feeling the presence of God.
Yeah.
Because, in the streets, you do what you do, and do what you have to do to get what you need to get, or get past where you need to go.
Yeah.
And you're surviving. And I feel a lot of times when speaking to others, they feel that sometimes we're just surviving.
Yeah. Which is so unfortunate. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, Christians are out here legitimately living life without Jesus. Christians are living life without Jesus. Go ahead.
I'd like to say something to add to what you said. Just because you grow up in the church does not make you a Christian or Christ-like.
Right.
And a lot of times what happens is that you, because of the culture and socialism and all these things that occur because we are people, that sometimes you have a tendency to learn how to be this false Christian or put on this religious mask.
Yeah.
And, and you can put it on and off like day or night,
Mm-hmm.
depending on who you're dealing with, which situation that you're in.
Yeah.
You can go from this secretive, really mean person to
Mm-hmm.
a nice person. And I had explained these things to my father. I said, Dad, growing up was kind of tough because I understood that you and Mom, had the Christian experience, but you never shared him with me or with the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
What I did learn was to be a very religious young man.
Mm-hmm.
And the very thing that I needed to sustain my life really was the dependency on me giving my life to Jesus.
Yeah.
And see, that wasn't so.
Yeah.
I was taught to be very religious.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn that pretty good.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. If Jenny was here, she would say the same. She would say the exact same. Which, as you do this, and when I say do this, as you start walking with Jesus more and more, you realize legitimately how much of a weight that is, to present yourself as perfect or try to present yourself as something that you are not really. And I love that he pointed out, I almost started crying while we were listening to it. And it was just one part where he ad-libbed in Champion, where he says, there's nothing left to prove. There's nothing left to prove. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, man. Because it's not. I don't have to prove anything to God the Father. Like, it's just my job to be loved and to love him back. Period. Dot.
Exactly.
And we carry so many other things that are not necessarily what God wanted us to carry.
I want to say I was probably like 12 years old. There was a pinnacle in my life as a 12-year-old that I reached, that I was tired of life itself. And I never in my life had experienced the love of God in such a supernatural way.
Yeah.
And there I was, a 12-year-old, went into a shed right next to our house, got a razor blade because I had been made fun of for many years because I couldn't speak right, because I stuttered all the time. So I would question things about God, believe it or not. And as a young boy, they would send me to a Baptist church. So I believe that God, through that, was already working in me. He was planting seeds that I really did not understand.
Yeah, that's what's up.
But then I found myself in this dark place. And I had a razor blade in my hand, and I said, God, why am I even here? Why did you create me? Lots of questions, man. I'm a person, and I was hurt. I had a lot of trauma. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was a little boy. But as I was about to do that stupid thing, oh man, the infiltration of a light, a presence that I had never in my life ever experienced came into that very place.
That's what's up.
And I was like, man, God, if this is you, man, I'm here, man. But that right there was a wake-up call to me, that I could feel love that was beyond my parents, beyond any other could give me.
Heck yeah.
And like you said, you don't deserve a thing, but God knows you. He created you.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. Exactly what you're saying. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I used to want to play churches. I hope one day your church goes big.
I hope it doesn't. I like wearing sweats to church.
And I question myself right now as we were singing and praising. Because a lot of people go to church and they sing and praise, but then at the end of the day, they're the same person.
Right.
So I asked myself, are you going to praise the Lord right now? Are you gonna raise your hand? Or are you just gonna do it when you're in a big church and
Yeah.
people are around you? Because you know, a lot of people out in the world, that's what they go to church for. They just want to be seen.
Yeah.
They want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
They look for that love that they haven't found in God.
Yeah.
So right now, I just want to, man, I'm gonna raise my hand and I'm gonna praise the Lord like if I was in a church of 5,000 people.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Because I can't forget that I'm here for God.
Yeah.
I'm not here for other people. And I think that's one of the things that's what you were asking.
Heck yeah, yeah.
Are we really here to praise
Yeah.
the Lord, or does it matter if it's just one person
Yeah.
or two people?
That's what's up.
Because it says in the Bible where two or more gathered,
Bruh.
His presence is there.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that, it was a good thing that I came to just for here today, just to acknowledge to see where I am.
Mm-hmm. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Amen. Go ahead.
Oftentimes we as Christians want to use a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think about that.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and one of the biggest ones is, we know Jesus as a light, and people acknowledge him as a light, but people get close to him. So that our brokenness is exposed.
Yeah.
Because we forget that we think he's exposing our brokenness so that others can see, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
For ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that he can fix it and glorify.
Yeah.
So we have to remember that we don't get safety net.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a book called Unpunishable. And in the book, he says that and it's funny because I read this book, then I read Unpunishable, and I was like, man, these things just like line up together. And he says in the book that we live in the punishment paradigm as human beings. And so essentially what happens is something wrong, we do something wrong, there's the shame, the guilt, we're afraid of the consequences of what will come, the punishment. And then what happens after that, we're like, I don't like that, so let me go into what he calls self-protection mode. And so he goes, this shows up in two ways. One, we become the good boy or the good girl, trying to be perfect, which, as everybody knows, you cannot do. And then on the other side, we become the wild child, because I'm just going to become numb to everything. I am the wild child. I'm just going to be numb. Nah, I got it. Cool, whatever. Yeah, let's get it over with. You know what I'm saying? Consequence. Fine. I already dealt with it myself, so you can't even hurt me, all that stuff. But on this, God being the safety, or us using a safety net with him, is because that we think God is the same. We think that God is only going to be, let me kick them out of the garden. Let me burn up Sodom and Gomorrah. Let me destroy the Israelites in the wilderness. Let me swallow them up in the earth. Let me, you know what I'm saying? Like, we only think of God in that light. But what he points out in that is God always gives us the opportunity first to reconcile the relationship. He always gives us the avenue to repent, to reconcile, and to be restored. And literally reading that, I was like, I'm gonna tell you what I thought. I was like, oh, man, that's crazy. Really? That's crazy. And as he started going through scripture, he goes, okay, look, he goes to Adam and Eve in the garden and he goes, where are you? And so if Adam shows up and goes, hey, so like, remember that time you was like, don't eat from the tree? And then, so she ate it. I was like, what? Looking good. Let me eat it too. So we ate it. We sorry. God fully would have restored them, reconciled them back to him, healed them, and it would have been done. They're living in the garden, chilling, having a good time. But what does Adam do? He goes into self-protection. Well, God, the woman you gave me, she did it. And what does she do? Because now she got to go into self-protection mode. It was the serpent. And Satan's like, yeah, it was me on Crip, cuz, And so literally, God gives them the opportunity to repent. And we feel oftentimes that we got to have this safety net because of this holiness, because of this looking at ourselves, the light literally shining through us, that we have to protect ourselves from him, when at the end of the day, he is the only person that can actually do anything about who we are. On any level, he's the only one that can actually move us and take us to a place where we can actually live in real harmony and real relationship. And I think that's so cool. Allison said, in regards to not coming to God because we don't want to see ourselves, she said, I know that I feel this. It is hard trying to work on yourself and see your own ugly stuff. I've been seeing that in my relationship with David too. She says, and I tend to run away. And that would be what I would say to you. Like, God is the one who can restore that. But that's what we do. We go into self-preservation instead of just saying, yo, I'm not all that I think that I am. Please help me, Jesus. Please. The next thing she said in this chapter, and it was actually a question of ours, where she said, holiness makes honesty an obligation. Whether we see ourselves as a communicator of God's truth like Isaiah or a person with a collar colored blue, our titles tell us little about who we are really. Whatever we do and however we identify, when near God, we will see the truth and nothing but it. That what God is, we are not. And that is holy. 36. Was that on 36? Oh, I'm moving forward. My bad. I was talking to myself out loud. Trey always says that. Dad, are you talking to yourself or are you talking to me? I'm talking to myself. Okay. Where is it? Going into moral perfection and the law. Where is it? Where we learned it, whether through counsel or conscience. Oh, yes, it is. However, we learned it on page 36 into moral perfection and the law. Whether through counsel or conscience, we responded by resisting all of the goodness it had to offer, God's law, proving something deep and dark about ourselves, mainly that we don't like to be like God. That's not to say that our sinfulness isn't a parody and rather a silly way of defying ourselves. The serpent still incentivizes unbelief by promising that it will make us like God. But our motive has never been to be like God in terms of righteousness, but of rights. Our motive has never been to be like God in terms of righteousness, but of rights. What are your thoughts? Because that's a heavy question. Go ahead, Jacob.
I mean, it's literally like the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be like him, we'll be able to do what he does and all that, but we don't want the responsibility for the holiness that
Yeah.
goes with it.
Dang.
So,
Jacob coming off the top rope.
Inversely,
Yeah.
you have to be perfect and have to be holy to be able to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't because we're not perfect and holy,
Mm-hmm.
and we just want the power.
Yeah.
We're trying to separate it like how you
Yeah.
talk about. But
Yeesh.
it's not just power here, it's holiness here. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it all goes together.
That's so good. You came off the top rope, dog. Go ahead.
That's like you going to the Father and saying, hey, I want you to change me.
Mm-hmm.
But this is how I want you to change me.
Bruh.
And so to let you know on top of that, though, God, there is some compartments inside of this physical body that
They're locked up.
Yeah.
We're not changing those at all.
You don't have to.
It's who I am.
And,
Yeah.
access is nice.
Yeesh.
But yet, can I still walk in your holiness and your grace and your mercy?
Bruh.
You get what I'm saying?
I do get what you're saying. Y'all preaching today.
That's the safety net.
Mm-hmm.
Change it, God, but don't use me.
Y'all talking today. Go ahead.
I want to say another thing that defines the Christians is the more we for God.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they bring up his name once here and once there, or it's every day, we're reading the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
That I was trying to say, it's a lot of subject, but it's one way that we can find the Christians.
Mm-hmm.
The more we do for God.
Heck yeah.
The more we do for God, the more we do for us.
Mm-hmm.
More prayers than answer, We got to make prayer, we need to do good deeds for telling people about what he done.
Yeah. Yeah. We're actually about to go into a little bit of that, of this back and forth. Go ahead.
If you go back to the original lie, which was, you would be like God.
Mm-hmm.
That was the original lie. And it's just like the enemy to take the truth and make it a lie.
Right.
Which the truth was, we were made in the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
We were made in the image of God. But the lie that was given is somehow you weren't.
Right. And you got to get to the image of, yeah.
And because somehow you weren't, now I'm gonna take you to a place where there are compartments,
Mm-hmm.
trauma,
Mm-hmm.
hurt, emotional rejection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take you to those places so that you can foundationally build on that lie.
Yeah.
And not on the lie that I'm giving you, which is you can have authority.
Yeah.
But let me introduce you to his name.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. You can have power, but let it come in.
Mm-hmm.
You can be holy as my son was holy.
Yeah.
But it's going to take you places that you don't want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not you go, me go.
Right. Right.
So, and I have an issue with obligation. The word obligation
Mhm.
is that you're obligated to be honest. Why are you obligated? Well, because that nature in
Yeah.
us
Mm-hmm.
that we believe all from the beginning.
Yeah.
And now it's compartmentalized. And I mean, and going back to our first teaching was that we are really good at creating ways to lie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's so big.
And honestly, you can eat on that for days.
Yeah.
Because we're created to lie. I'm not good enough.
Uh-huh.
That's the biggest one I've seen. You know, trauma.
Mhm.
I have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talk to me. I've been serving the Lord 38 years. I have trauma. You know what happens with trauma? It doesn't happen when it's going on to you. It
Mm-hmm.
happens when you relax and you rest. And it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And the tears come.
Yeah.
Before the worshiping of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And you experience his holiness. You say, Lord, I want that.
Yeah.
I got trauma.
Yeah.
I got trauma. And the Lord's
It's
like,
tight.
I'm holy.
I got you. I got you.
Right, right.
I got you.
But it's the lie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, birds don't question their
Bruh.
creator or why they were created.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it.
Go ahead. I won't get into it.
We will. We'll talk about it. Go ahead, Gracie.
All right, so in my apologetics class, we were talking about like we all have the nature of God in us.
Yeah.
And because of the fall of man, we don't see like the nature of like love and be
Right.
loved, all of that, but we suppress that with other reasonings, and then we idolize our traumas and we don't give it to God. And so like I'm from the Bible Belt, and so like I was a product of a divorced family, and so one of my family members told me that I was the last kid to see if they actually loved each other, and so like having that weight on me for a while, it's like I can never be loved. I'm always gonna have trauma, and so as I grew up, there's a bunch of things that happened, and I was like, well, maybe there is something wrong with me where I can't be loved. And so finally, a lot of things were happening from my middle school to my sophomore year. I was moving schools, and like I was in the same situation as you, sir, but you know, I was in a situation. It was a supernatural miracle, basically, that happened, and I just felt like I'm not worthy of what God has, but I'm not lovable. I'm
Yes.
not worthy. I'm not ugly.
Yeah.
Broken in any way.
Mhm.
God still calls me, still wants me, still has a plan for me.
Mhm.
And taking that moment, if I didn't just follow what God had told me in that moment, I know I wouldn't have been here, and I know I wouldn't have been as happy as I am.
Heck yeah. Yes, sir.
You know, like the rights, talking about the rights, and we often pray for the peace in God's hands. Say love, peace, self-control. We pray for the peace in God's hands. And once we get it, we take it at face value. That's the peace.
Mm-hmm.
The love, or the peace of that. We as Christians say that we're entitled to this. We're entitled to this But throughout the whole process of this entitlement as Christians or believers, we're not even looking or grasping from the Father's hands, the ones that are holding us together.
Right.
The ones offering us
Right.
our rights as His sons and daughters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to be restored. But we're willing to grab the things from His hands, but we don't really want to grab His hand.
Yeah.
Because we don't want Him, we don't want God to grab our hands, because we know once He grabs us, He'll never let go.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to if we grab God's hands, we can let go and come back at any time. You know, when something comes up, and usually in most of our life, I've been in and out, is that for me it was a constant cycle.
Yeah.
It was a cycle. How are you? And it was self-sabotage. So okay, this is the moment. God, I need peace. God, I need love.
Mm-hmm.
God, I need restoration. I was just cycle. We're creatures of habit. We self-sabotage ourselves, and God wants us to stop going around the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Stop doing that. Because I have a right, I got to do this, and like Paul said in Romans 6:1, shall we continue to sin, certainly not, so that grace may abound.
Mm-hmm.
And God said, well, why are you abusing your rights? Why are you running your rights as a hot credit card? Sooner or later, somebody's got to pay.
Yeah. Which she talks about that in this book, how I'm not going to give too much away, but eventually, because God does give us this avenue to access Him through Jesus, because we can't have literally everything, Him being the prized possession of it all. If we just keep choosing to not have it, He will let us not have it, which is scary. I'll be like, Jesus, I am crazy. Like, just make sure, like, please, that, like, I just don't leave me in my craziness, because, like, this is not fun. I mean, sometimes I think it's fun, but it's not fun. Like, don't leave me there, you know?
On the flip side of that, the more close we are with God and in tune with His heart, that's all that we want. That's all that our natural heart wants. But the farther we are away from God, then we're going to be like, well, I really want that Lamborghini. I mean, that's what I want.
Preach. David said we feel entitled to our own rights and we obsess with our own protection of self. Yeesh. Y'all are talking today a lot. He said we feel entitled to our own rights and obsessed with our own protection of self. We are obsessed, which leads me to what? It leads me to the next thing. So, I know, that's what I want to do. I want to preach. I'm not preaching. We're discussing. So she goes into, on page 37, the 10 Commandments. And she says, the law tells us about the ethical nature of God if we look at it closely, observing it like a curious child in the mother's lap. The first 5 precepts of the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments, reveal God's worth. The inverse of the first tenet, to have no other gods but God, would be an idolatrous endorsement if it were reversed and reshaped to command Israel to have other gods before God. So she's like, essentially, if you were to change it and make it the opposite, like, it would be ridiculous and crazy for God to command them to that. And eventually she goes down and she says, these first 4 testaments, I am the Lord your God. Exodus chapter 20, verse 2. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and the 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, You or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your livestock or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So she goes on to say, God doesn't set this law up about himself so that we are in this like contract of obligation to serve him. She says God sets these up because if he were to do the opposite, if he were to say, go and serve other gods, he would then not be a good father because those other gods cannot give you all the things that he can give you. So in the law, God points you back to himself because he is it. He's the only thing that can actually satisfy the things that you are looking for. And unfortunately, that is not what we are teaching in churches. We're not telling people, yo, if God were to say, have other gods before me, go ahead, worship idols, do this, whatever you want. Yeah. Oh, y'all down there making a golden calf right now? That's what's up. I love gold. No. Because if God does that, then God is not God because there is no darkness within him. He would literally be sealing our fate away from him. I'm going to get you in a minute because I'm about to preach this a little bit. But I go, how crazy is that? When was the last time you thought, oh man, if I flip these commandments, this is actually something that I could not get anything from them. I cannot get love and joy and peace and righteousness and holiness from a table. I cannot get it from a Christmas tree. As much as I love Christmas, we heading into March. March is when your boy starts wearing his Christmas stuff again. I love Christmas. But outside of Jesus, none of it is actually going to get me all the things that God actually has for me in relationship with him. God is so good that he actually made a law that said, hey, come back to me because when you do, I have the whole world for you. How crazy is that? That's crazy. I'm going to say it again. God is so good that he made a law that requires you to be in good relationship with him because there is nothing better that you can get from anywhere else. And we look at the 10 Commandments and we go, oh, dang it, I messed up again. And we miss the entire part of the whole situation. We miss all of that. That's crazy. That's so crazy to me because I see it all the time. I see people looking and searching and trying to take that power, trying to find my rights, trying to see what I can get, what I deserve. And we spend so much time not looking at what gods we have before God. And so then we show up to small group, we show up and we're like, well, guys, I'm struggling again. I need you to pray for me because I just need help because Jesus is good, but I don't like him sometimes. I don't want to say it, but I can't. And we go into this cycle of things that God never actually intended, when what he just intended was, if you've got nothing else before me, I promise you I will make it worth your while, more than you could ever imagine. Just in relationship with me. We're not even talking about, and all these things will be added unto you. We're just talking about seek first the kingdom.
I feel like I experience like this week in my life.
That's tight.
Today.
Bruh.
Like I am not in the place where I want to be. Like I'm not like in the goals that I want to be setting.
Mm-hmm.
Just coming back to like I'm not doing what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But not with like reminding myself this and reminding myself like the heart and soul are good and for connection with him. So like communion.
Yes.
It's not about what Marissa can't do or just thriving and not thriving. It's like Jesus wants to be with you.
There's nothing left to prove.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to prove. Yes.
Literally, like,
Yes. Yes.
For my good.
For your good, not his. He doesn't need anything. He does not need anything else. He just want to love you. Just want to love you. Thought you should know. Just want to love you. Know? That's God in heaven hanging out, singing Akon. He was like, good song, Akon. Good song. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yep.
One of the components, the reason he took us out of Egypt, one of the reasons we didn't want to go, is because we didn't want to leave her go.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to leave her go. So he had to go through a process of play
Yeesh.
with Pharaoh so we could take our gold with us. What did we do when we got into the wilderness?
Made some gold.
Use that gold.
Use that gold.
Use that gold
Mm-hmm.
to make the God because we thought he wasn't there. We thought he wasn't there.
Yeesh. Oh, this whole book is all about how there he is.
So,
Anyway.
go through and experience it. You know, his holiness, seeing his holiness. And he keeps telling us, I'm taking you to land of what?
Milk and honey.
Milk and honey.
Which that means lactose intolerances of the devil. Nobody need no oat milk.
We do.
Yeesh.
Because we don't recognize him.
Mm-hmm.
Or our milk.
Mm-hmm.
And he begins to, deal with us. This gentleman over here sitting here listening to you saying you don't get, you're not where you're supposed to be. He probably don't understand that. But he understands where he's not supposed to be. So both of you are in the same place we will have his holiness.
Mm-hmm.
His holiness. And his holiness, because of who he is. When I go before my grandchildren, they were so innocent, and they say some of the most profound things to me. Am I right?
Yeah.
And young people, because they don't have that drive for gold. You know, and they say some profound things. And what he's saying is, I'm bringing you back to that place. You recognize my holiness.
Mm-hmm.
It's been dressed up as something else. And my holiness is what obligates you not just to be honest, because honesty in this definition is to be what? Straight up, pure, transparent. Knowledge of who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who can in this room sit and say that we fully are transparent in knowledge of who we really are right now?
Mm-hmm.
I can say what I've done, I can say who I've been, I can say what I'm doing now. But if you really got me to say what I am in the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
I will not know how to begin.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've yet to acknowledge his holiness.
Yeah.
Obligation and honesty.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, just imagine this, that if there was not a standard of law,
Mm-hmm.
because you wrote applies that from the creation to the flood, there was no standard of living, trying to live through a commandment.
Right.
It was not present until Moses came.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that would kind of be, in retrospect, us today without laws.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine the chaos it would be if there was no preservation of control. Some way or somehow in the law. That's why I strongly believe that. I do believe that God created the earth, but man himself has created the world, which is the system in which we live in.
Yeah.
And now, because of that, it's drawn up a barrier because we don't see God as clear as we should.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the definition of who we are, see, there's a lot of weakness in us. We're not worthy. And that's the enemy telling you.
Yeah.
God's untouchable.
Yeah.
He's unreachable. God doesn't care about you. And that's the lie that what you're saying.
Right.
That occurred.
Right.
But if you believe that lie, you're going to live the lie.
Correct. Every single
But if
time.
you believe God's word, which Jesus says, I am that word.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
then
Yeesh.
the very nature of what God created you as a human being,
Mhm.
where the Spirit of God will begin to infiltrate those dark places,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll begin to see things come about in your life and change.
Yeah.
Not for the world, but
Yeah.
as a representation of
As
who
a
God is.
representation.
And then they're drawn to, because they'll say, we're different, man.
Yes.
Why are you so different?
I love
and here
this.
comes the question. I want to be like you. There's something.
Mm-hmm. It's something
unique
different, yeah.
about you. You even smell like a smell about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what Jesus was talking about. Go out and preach the gospel.
Yes. Yes.
There's doctrine, there's gospel. There's
Yes.
truth. And that's what he wants us to do.
I'm laughing because I'm excited. No. Because you're going right into what she says next.
Don't get me to preach, bro. I'll
Everybody's been preaching today. So literally, on this, she goes, when we look at the second set of the commandments, it's all of this stuff. Honor your mother and father. Thou shalt not steal. Don't commit murder. Yada, yada, yada. All these things, right? She says what he commands of Israel there is what he is in himself. Love is not God, but God is love. And so being, he is active in how he gives it away. Murder, theft, adultery, dishonesty, and covetousness are a set of behaviors and heart postures that don't exist in God. Not merely because he is love, but because he is holy. Without it, love is purely sentimental, easily misplaced, and unconditionally conditional. We do not have enough time to talk about that sentence. I wanted to talk about that sentence, but we'll talk about it later. Holiness is what makes real love possible. Without it, love is purely sentimental, easily misplaced, and unconditionally conditional. Being morally perfect positions God's love as a living thing that won't and literally can't dishonor creation. So imagine again the reversal of the duty to love our neighbor. So everything that God does for us, like you just said, because we are made in his image, we now have to go and love like he does. So we do not murder. We do not lie. We do not steal. Not because those are the rules, but because that is not love, which comes from the holiness of who God is, and we are made in that image. And literally, she says, if you change all those things, please, by all means, steal. Please lie. Please murder. Have a great time. She says, what I've described above sounds more like Satan than it does God. But who do you suppose we are imaging? Who do you suppose we are imaging God as when his holiness is disregarded in our definitions of him? So when it comes to the law, again, we see it as a set of rules versus this is who I am to be because my Father is this. You see the 10 Commandments completely differently now, and how I live these things out. They're not just this old set of rules where we can nitpick, oh, well, I'm not doing these things. It's not even about that. Because even if I go there, that now means that I have taken God and I put him right here next to Rayford. And we're good. Because I'm not murdering, I'm not stealing, I'm not lying. It's cool. But we forgot the first part where everything in God, if I put no other gods before him, I'm going to get everything that I need in him, which naturally is going to make me look out at you guys and treat you like God would treat you. That is my one prayer, not just as a pastor, as a person. Jesus, let me see people like you see people. First, anybody, then as a husband, then my kids, and then this church. Let me be the best version of you that I can be. Let me be the best version of you. So I have to come back to what he said first. No other gods before me. Don't worship anything else. Because when you do, you're going to be let down. That's what, like, comma, you will be let down. Comma, they will not be faithful to the end. Comma, they cannot be your champion. Comma, they will not last forever. Those are all songs that we sang today. And those are why we sing those things, because God is all of that. And we take him and we shrink him down to something that is manageable for ourselves. And then we go and we do, and we're just like, oh, well, God loves me, so it's cool. The grace abounds. I'm cool. But I missed what God intended. He actually just wanted a relationship with me from the beginning anyway. And I disregard the relationship with him for the sake of God. I did. Look, I did all these things. We look like a 4-year-old going, look, I made all these paintings, Dad. I was like, I don't even know what those are. Great job, Dad, I did all these things. Look at my hair, Dad. I did my hair. Like, liquid just dropped. Like, how much product is in your hair? Just running down his face, Dad, I did all these things. I did. And we excited. And God's like, but if you would just sit on my lap and watch basketball with me and just chill, that would be awesome. If you would just sit down and not hit your sister and not pick on her and then come tell on her because she hit you back, if you could just sit and let's just be here together. Let's just hang out. Let's just do that. And we skip all of that for the sake of trying to prove because of the lie. Y'all see how all of this is just wrapped within each other? Because we miss God and his holiness, we miss everything that he actually intended for us. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
He did say, be still.
Bruh.
Know that I am God.
Be still.
For a reason, he just let me do what I need to do. Just chill,
Gosh.
Patient. Wait upon the Lord. He's gonna mount you up on eagle's wings.
Just relax.
Relax.
Just relax.
Absorb you. Take me in. Let me do what I need.
Yeesh. Last thing before we close, she says, our sinful nature is the very reason for a necessary woe in response to the presence of the Holy One. The law magnifies our darkness because its giver is light. The law magnifies our darkness because its giver is light. Anybody ever think about like how the Israelites probably had a hard time? You're like, man, they had such a hard time. Like, they didn't have a whole Bible with like breakdowns and like, they didn't have nobody writing no extra books on top. You're just like, hey, you can sit and discuss. Sometimes I sit and I go, man, they must have had a hard time. But when you come back to what God intended, then you see how Jesus shows up on the scene and he's like, you guys missed it. You can see why he's talking to the Pharisees and the Sadducees saying, y'all are a bunch of idiots. You think you are doing something, but you have no relationship with the Father. It makes so much sense when you start looking at the letters in the New Testament and they're like, you don't know the Father. Because today we sit and we go, well, yeah, I do know God. I go to church. I do know God. I listen to Christian music. I do know God. I listen to Caleb. I'm like, Caleb don't even count. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it does. Personally, I'm like, it's just because they do the drive every spring and fall. And then you're like, are we going to listen to it? Anyway, neither here nor there. Neither here nor there. But I go, we miss it. We miss the fact that God just wants the relationship with us. We miss it. And when you look back at the 10 Commandments, it's like, oh, this makes sense for the rest of the Bible. When you go back to Adam and Eve, oh, this actually makes sense. As you go through every Sunday school story that you were told, It makes so much sense now. The law came, and because God is light, the law lets us know when and where we have misstepped outside of the relationship. That's crazy. Literally, I can come back and go, oh, I put this in front of God. For me, this weekend, I was watching Pam and Tommy on Hulu because I've been single parenting this week, and my kids have been stressing me out because they have a lot of energy. And so I was like, I'm watching TV. Should I reread this chapter? Yes, I probably should. I'm going to watch TV. And immediately I can come back to, yeah, I let Hulu sit on the throne of my heart. Was it a good time? It was a good time. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a good time. Was I checking in with Jesus? Yes, I was. But that's the truth of the matter, because that's how easy it happens. But I go more than that. As my kids, am I loving them as God would love them? I'm tired. I'm stressed out. Everybody who got kids, no one understands what's that's like. Go sit down somewhere. Can you stop touching me, please? Why do you have to come over? My son does this thing where he like puts his head on my arm and he just like drives his head forward, you know? You're like, what are you doing? Stop, you know? And I go, how would God legitimately respond in that moment? I'm like, well, Lord, you don't even get tired. So like, hook me up with that part. So then at least I'm not tired. But I go, it is coming back to what he intended from the beginning that I'm able to look and go, oh, it's not that I messed up. It's not that I am struggling. It's that I'm just not tapping into the relationship that the Father is offering me so that I can be the father to my kids that he would want me to be. It's a completely different thought process. The law doesn't show me that I failed. The law shows me where I just need to come back to him. And that's the whole story of the prodigal son. It's the whole story of the lost sheep. It's the whole story. It's everything Jesus tells us in the New Testament. Isn't that crazy? Last thing for real this time. She says it reveals our impurities because its giver is pure. And it does. Allison said earlier, there's almost a relief when you have that light shined on you. It's the relief that you can finally take the mask off and be who God really made you to be. And that is what it is about. Every single time, every single moment, every single day, slowing down and coming right back to that. So we're going to go into the holy place. We're going to spend some time with Jesus. YouTube, we'll see y'all on the flip. I think the questions are in the description box, so y'all have them. I'll send out a text later this week. We'll see y'all on the flip. Stay up. Y'all have fun.